As a small business owner, my favorite thing about posting a job on LinkedIn is that when I hit post, I clock out and LinkedIn clocks in.
LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, get qualified candidates, and manage them all in one place. Plus, LinkedIn extends the reach of your job post by allowing you to share it with your network. And hiring managers that add a hiring frame to their LinkedIn profiles receive 2 times more qualified applicants. Go to linkedin.com/achieve to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Testa, and this is our show for the week of Thursday, February 17th, 2025. On the show today, news, listener questions, and surveys. Then in our main segment, Jim continues the history of Disney's upcoming Lakeside Lodge DVC resort. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that microbiologists are way bigger than you think. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len, but conversely, folks who work in macroeconomics are not nearly as big as you might expect them to be, and more to the point, they have no practical knowledge when it comes to macrame. So what the hell am I supposed to do with all this yarn?
What is it that you're experts on again? I can't tell.
There we go.
You went to school for how long? For what?
For what? Anything. Tell me how to keep the cat out of the stuff. That's all I'm looking for at this point.
God, the intellectual stuff we talk about in this show, it's beautiful.
This is true.
All right, Jim, let's do a shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com, including Jonna Parker, Matt Dame17, Dimitri Ravanos, Ali Knowlton, Clayton Wallace, and KP the 1000th Happy Haunt. Jim, this is Disney's research team working on exciting new ways to book your next vacation. Displaying actual prices for hotels and tickets is so 2024. Soon, Disney's website won't show any costs at all. Instead, a new Peg Leg Pete AI avatar will negotiate with you one-on-one with questions like, how much were you looking to spend? And my manager wants to know what it's going to take to get you into this Saratoga Springs studio today. True story.
I just have to ask, how is Peg Leg Pete virtually going to take your car keys, all right? Always love that little bit of theater.
Yeah. You're going where? How? Yeah,
there we go. Oh, God. All right.
On to the news. The Disney Dish News is sponsored by DVC Rental Store. Have you ever dreamed about staying in deluxe accommodations at Disney for a fraction of the cost? If so, the DVC Rental Store connects guests with incredible savings on Disney Vacation Club resorts. Whether you're a DVC member looking to rent your points or a guest who's looking to stay in style, the DVC Rental Store offers a seamless process for both. And don't forget, they also offer exciting point swaps for unforgettable experiences like cruises and adventures. Check them out at dvcrentalstore.com/DisneyDish. All right, Jim, it's lunchtime when we record this, and I want to talk about Epic Universe menus. Did you see that Universal released details and images of the food that they'll be serving across Epic Universe?
Yes, and some of this is going to be challenging, Len. I guess that's the to sort of dig in on, and I say this as somebody who loves going to German restaurants. Just sort of like, can we talk about the blood orange chicken sandwich for a moment?
You mentioned that. I put an image of it in the show notes. So we're talking here about Das Steakhouse, and that's STAKE house in Dark Universe. Lots of items are served with wooden skewers, steaks. Get it?
There we go.
And so this is the restaurant that the monsters supposedly frequent, right? So you've got the blood orange chicken sandwich for Dracula and things like that. Jim, but did you hear the rumor that you won't be able to ask for garlic with your steak in Das Steakhouse?
Okay.
I mean, it's just the little touches, right?
There we go.
But you can get a cheesy garlic soft pretzel at the Burning Blade Tavern, where the monster hunters gather. So that's genius. Also, the bun here is black, and it looks like the blood orange, the sauce on it, is actually red like blood. It's just really, really smart stuff.
Yeah. What else we got food-wise coming out of Epic?
The press release detailed something from every land. The other one I wanted to highlight, though, was in Super Nintendo World. So there's Toadstool Cafe, and it has something called Bowser's Fireball Challenge, which is a 1-pound meatball smothered in cheese and marinara sauce.
Oh.
And Jim, I don't know if this is sponsored by Crestor or like how does that partnership go?
There we go. Does it come with the complimentary cot so I can lie down afterwards? I'll be here for a couple hours, guys. Just circle back, okay?
Exactly. They didn't say if like is this like does it come with like one fork or six? I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh.
But everything looks really good. There's they detail food that's coming into Ministry of Magic and stuff like that, and a lot of it is fairly standard stuff that you see similar things in other Universal restaurants. But all of it looked very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
USA Today apparently got samples of the food, which
okay.
Be fair to small media is all I'm saying. Anyway,
okay.
And speaking of new things, over in Disneyland, did you see that Disneyland's going to have a new Star Wars themed show and character reading as part of Seasons of the Force?
Yes. Now, let's talk first about this projection show, the Shadows of Memory, a Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
I have been told by folks at Disneyland, and it's important to stress here, this is strictly Disneyland that has this projection show, not Florida.
Be fair to Florida. Go ahead.
Okay. But but what's interesting is that the model for this show it's not something like Jingle Bell, Jingle Bam, the projection show on like the Chinese theater where thousands of people can watch this at the same time. But because the space where this is going to be projected inside of Black Spire Outpost is so tight, it's supposed to be actually like the Hogwarts Castle show in that it will be presented every 15 minutes or so after.
Oh.
Well, evidently the place you have to watch this, because it has to be projected on actual spires of Black Spire Outpost, is down by the Millennium Falcon. And to be honest, that's kind of a tight spot, Len. So the notion is that they will do this multiple times a night, whereas the Fires Burning Bright, the fireworks show that they do,
right?
That will only be done on nights when they do the Disneyland fireworks, because that kind of piggybacks on that.
Got it. By the way, I love the press release for this. That I believe there was an image of the Millennium Falcon, and the caption underneath it was a replica of the Millennium Falcon. And I was like, a what? A what of what?
Oh dear.
God, gotta love it. You know what? It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Also, coming is a character greeting with, quote, a shadowy visitor.
Yeah.
And so the rumor here is that this is Luke Skywalker in some way.
Yeah. But what's interesting is this is not the crabby old Luke Skywalker that.
Oh no, that's what I heard. I thought it was. No, it's not.
No, it's not. Okay,
is it young Luke?
It is actually supposed to be the Luke, to be specific, from Return of the Jedi. In fact, if you look
Episode 6.
There we go. If you look at the outfit they have him pose in, it's the all black outfit with the cape. When we first get to see him, when he arrives at Jabba's palace. So this gets interesting because this is the further sort of breaking the back of that. Remember, when Star Wars Galaxy's Edge first opened, it was deliberately built to celebrate the timeline of the Poe, Rey, Finn, Kylo Ren.
It was a controversial decision that got analyzed in the press, but it was a conscious decision.
It was
on Disney's part, yeah.
Yeah, and since then, since the two Galaxy's Edges opened up both coasts in 2019, we have gradually seen Disney step away from this. Some of that's on the back of course, the success of The Mandalorian, but we've also, in the not so distant past, seen Boba Fett and Fennec Shand show up, Ahsoka Tano show up, and it's been explained to me, this is basically, well, first of all, it's Disney giving up. It's like, all right, it's Star Wars land. All right, like
Star Wars land, exactly, yeah.
Like fantasy land. So if the Peter Pan flight is right across the street from the Tangled Toilets, which is on the corner with Small World, who cares? Just come in here and buy a $200 lightsaber, please.
All right, canon, timeline, it's all meaningless. Yeah, it's the melting pot of of Star Wars lore, it's fine.
There we go. Yeah. There we go.
So do you think these are coming to Disney World? I mean, Disneyland typically does these sort of limited run things, not Disney World, right?
They do. But at the same time, the folks in Florida are clearly keeping an eye on what excites people in California. And the notion is, all right, is this practical for our park? So I have heard that, again, that the Star Wars land thing is coming to Florida. Just it's like, look, if you love what you love of Star Wars, will be here in this part of the park. It doesn't really matter which iteration or which timeline, it'll be here. Just show up and bring your wallet.
Do you think they'll ever change the name?
Let's get on the other side of the supper club that supposedly.
Okay, all right.
I'm just saying.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm. Okay, on to. By the way, that's a rumor. That's not announced. All right, so
this is true.
I don't even know what you're talking about, Jim. What?
There we go. All right.
Who am I? Why am I here? Okay. I feel like David Byrne in a Talking Heads video. Anyway,
you are not my beautiful wife. There we go.
Exactly. Right. This is not my beautiful podcast.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So Disney Cruise Line announced some 2026 itineraries. A couple of notable things: that Magic and the Wonder will sail Alaska, Jim, at the same time. Did you see this?
Oh, I really wanted to do that itinerary. Well, cool. All right. Twice the opportunities. Okay. All right.
And I think part of this is that Disney's found some really strong pricing power on its Alaska itineraries. Mm-hmm. So having two ships there makes sense. Okay. The Wish, the Fantasy, the Treasure, and the Destiny will focus on the Caribbean, and the Adventure is going to be in Singapore. I posted all of the itineraries in the show notes. But interestingly, I think the Dream is going to go back and forth to Europe again. Mm-hmm. And that's actually been the favorite cruise that I've done over the last few years. Is the Dream in Europe. It's a relatively modern ship. Maintenance on it's been excellent. The itineraries, especially the Northern Europe itineraries during summer, control the temperatures pretty well. I would look to those. That would probably be my first choice. Okay. Duly noted.
I have a friend who's been actually it's a mutual friend of ours, Len, who's been leaning on me hard to commit to a Disney cruise, and I think 2026 is finally the year. So
you should do it. The Dream in Europe. It's the way to do it.
Okay.
Or Singapore. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Also, Jim, a bit of a recent news today. Hollywood Studios held an unannounced Villaintines Day on Thursday, where Disney villains took over the park. So guests got handed bookmarks and paper valentines with villains on it, and I put copies of them in the show notes. So there's a Valentine's card from Captain Hook who says, "Blast it, pick me, be mine," and one from Cruella de Vil and all of the other Jafar's, and then plenty of character greetings and stuff too. And the idea is that you can fold these and cut them out or pull them apart and give them to people. But I love the fact that it was an unannounced special event in the parks. That's kind of great.
Okay. All right.
Love it.
No, this is what I want to hear from Disney.
Yeah.
As opposed to other things we'll be discussing later in today's show. So
fantastic idea. Whoever came up with it, that really thinking that was kind of great.
This is true.
Good job. All right, last little bit of news. If you're planning to buy theme park tickets for a trip later this year, there's no time like the present. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. On to surveys from our friend Milton, who sent in a survey from his recent Disneyland visit. Jim, I want to focus on two questions here. First one is this: which of the following reasons describe why you chose a particular day to visit the Disneyland resort? Please select all that apply. And here are a few of them. This date worked best with my group's personal schedule. Tickets were less expensive on this day. This date holds particular significance. It's a birthday and anniversary, something like that.
Okay.
I expected the crowds to be lighter. Something I wanted to experience was only available on these days. My first choice of days wasn't available. This was a spontaneous visit, and I wanted to purchase specific food or merchandise before it was gone.
Oh, okay.
And I love this question because it gives Disney a sense of whether any days of the year are, for lack of a better term, non-negotiable for you when it comes to visiting it, right? And then they can adjust ticket prices accordingly, right? Like you don't need to vary ticket prices or give discounts on days where everyone decides that this date works best for me and my group's personal schedule. And they don't know that now. Like one of the things that they don't know about visitation is, why did these people come to this park on this day? And this question helps answer that.
My one concern here is we are very much living in the era of AI at this point, and the notion of just sort of gathering that bit of info and filing it away and understanding that somebody who says something like that, this was a significant day for me, or that sort of thing, and that's an advertising prompt for years to come.
Check. We'll store that in the database for future reference.
There we go.
Also, the other one I like is this. At the Disneyland Resort, we periodically update the rides, shows, restaurants, and shops in our parks, which may mean they are closed or undergoing renovations for a period of time. Did you notice any closures or renovations at Disney California Adventure on the day of your visit? And then how much of this impacted your recent experience? And all I'm going to say, Jim, is run this in Florida. Like, put this in the Animal Kingdom. Send that one out. You cowards.
Oh.
Just kidding. I love you guys. You know.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. On to listener questions. Speaking of triggering me, Jeff Clune knows how much Disney marketing lingo grinds my gears and sent in this from the Parks blog. And it says, turn over a new leaf at Communicore Hall. There's a new activation getting ready to bloom at Communicore Hall. Get a bee's eye view at Communicore Hall with a new gallery that is larger than life. Grab a bite at Epcot Farmer's Feast and learn more about how Disney's horticulture team brings topiaries, flower towers, and more to the Epcot International Flower and Garden Festival. Okay. As I've said before, Jim, the word activation is industry jargon at best, and no guest knows what it means. But I'm more fascinated that the headline and the first two sentences mention Communicore Hall, then a suggested place to eat that isn't anywhere near Communicore Hall, and then the last sentence is about the stuff in Communicore Hall. But as you and I talked about before the show, the media relations team has had a rough week. They're working hard. God bless them. Let them have this. Fair enough.
Okay. That said, though, face it, the folks coming in behind Festival of the Arts to stage something at Communicore Hall, the bar has been raised. What Disney Theatrical put in there for
that was fantastic.
It was fantastic. And by the way, to give them a little love right now, just today they are revealing that the first North American tour of Beauty and the Beast. And again, remember, that was the very first show that Disney did back in the 90s to sort of launch Disney Theatrical. But they are a brand new North American tour of Beauty and the Beast. Begins, I want to say, in June of this year in Schenectady, New York.
Schenectady. All right.
There we go. Before it then continues on to the Palace Theater in Chicago. But brand new production. But again, they did such a nice job in Communicore Hall. This is a free plug because, again, you did nice work. It should be recognized, so we'll plug your thing.
It wasn't even just the costumes. It was the music, the lighting, everything about it was spot on. They did really well.
Okay, so just saying, Flower and Garden, all right, step up. You got get it. Just saying.
Do what you can with the plants.
There we go. Okay.
All right. From Jeff Z, who says, I just listened to the episode where guests called out Disney for using store-bought props in the new Haunted Mansion merch shop in Disneyland. I work in manufacturing and retail, so I can validate that store-bought props are absolutely used throughout Disney World. Let's just say a certain country with a city named Paris was a big fan of Hobby Lobby's Summer 2020 collection. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
The way he said it, a big fan of Hobby Lobby's Summer 2020 collection was like the way you would say it. It was like, well, it was the Christian Dior 2020 collection, but it was Hobby Lobby. Just the phrasing on that was nice.
It was.
All right. From Ian Tewksbury, who says, a recent show you guys had somebody ask about the Steve Guttenberg Tower of Terror movie not being on Disney+. One of the movies I've been looking for on Disney Plus is the 1979 film, The North Avenue Irregulars. Is it not on Disney Plus for the same reason? Right. And this is because we think Disney didn't want to pay the actors for the relatively few people who were going to see it. So Jim, I wasn't familiar with this movie and I had to look it up.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, no, you have to understand.
You paid money to see this?
I am old enough to have actually seen this in theaters, Len, and this was during that period when, again, in fact, it's ironic. We're going to be talking about this in the feature today, when Disney was struggling to connect with audiences back in the late 70s. So this was their idea of, let's create a film that the kids will come out and see. Let's get Edward Herrmann as a fighting pastor.
You're joking, but Ruth Buzzy and Alan Hale were in this.
Absolutely.
I mean, nothing says family friendly like Ruth Buzzy.
There we go. And Karen Valentine from Room 222. I mean, again, it's Disney back in the day. They didn't go to the trades to cast. They picked up TV Guide. Who's in a sitcom now? All right.
I read the plot synopsis on Wikipedia, and honest to God, Jim, I got up and looked to check to see if I had taken my medication for today. Because I was reading this like, okay, I'm gonna read this paragraph again because I'm not sure that those words. I mean, it was all in English, but you put it together and it didn't make sense. Anyway,
okay. Well, just one note before we go here. Again, you mentioned Ruth Buzzy. The scene that she's featured in is she's a member of the church, and she ends up in a demolition derby. Just a sweet little old lady suddenly becomes this brute behind the wheel. So
and just remember, we are not hearing the carbon monoxide detector going off in the background of Jim's house.
No.
So he's speaking the truth.
There we go.
It's actually available on YouTube for $3.99. I put the link in the show notes, Ian.
Okay.
By the way, it's Black History Month and we're talking about movies, so I'm going to recommend the following 3 movies that I've watched. The first one is called Day Shift. It's a vampire comedy starring Jamie Foxx and Snoop Dogg. And if that's enough to sell the movie right there. Black Dynamite, which is an action comedy homage parody of 70s blaxploitation films from Michael J. White. The dialogue, Jim, is almost perfect. And then they cloned Tyrone. It's a sci-fi comedy, also with Jamie Foxx and John Boyega from Star Wars.
Oh,
yes.
All
of them very funny. Okay. All of them great date night movies. Just really, really, really funny stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. From Aaron Lee, who says, considering the company seems to be willing to do anything possible to dig deeper into our pockets, if Disney was going to bring back the concept of the Magic Kingdom Club or something similar, I'd love to know what you and Jim think it would be like today. And more importantly, how much would they charge for it? All right. I mean, so there are a couple of things that had real value with the Magic Kingdom Club, right? Discounts, number one. And two, early access to certain things. Like we talked about the concept of annual passes and all-inclusive vacation packages and stuff like that, right? And because the updates and the magazines are all online now, right? So you can kind of think of the Magic Kingdom Club as a membership, sort of like Costco, where you pay a certain amount of money each year for membership, whether you use it or not, right? And that's the thing that gets you the perks and the discounts. But that sounds a lot like D23, right?
Yeah, and if I could interrupt here for just a second, I mean, I go to the expo because it's a trade show, and I work the side of the street, I subscribe to D23. But I was chatting with Leonard Maltin about this, about how wrong-headed D23 as an organization is. I mean, Leonard told me about how, example, when the Disney News magazine that you used to get with the Magic Kingdom Club would show up at his house. I mean, he said, I carried it into the bathroom and I read it to cover to cover, and it sat in there, and I knew everything that the Disney company came up to. Says now with D23, 4 times a year, I get their artsy-fartsy magazine that comes in its plastic slipcover. It says, I read it once, I put it back in its plastic slipcover, and it goes on the wall, and I never touch it again.
Yeah.
And every year from D23, I get a box of things that I open once and look at. It's like, wow, that's a really ugly statue of Mickey. And I put it away. Or it's a neckerchief I'll never use, or a set of pins that are useless. And it's just sort of like, I would trade all of that for a real discount at the parks, don't give me more crap to dust. Give me something I would actually use.
That's the thing, like the discounts that are there right now. I went out and checked the D23 page before we got started today.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are definitely discounts for hotels and restaurants,
Yeah.
but none of them are Disney-owned hotels or
Yeah.
Disney-owned restaurants.
I mean,
it's all third-party stuff.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it just the folks who are running D23 are so disconnected from what the fans are interested in. I mean, for example, the magazine that's coming out this month, that we have our exclusive cover story with Harrison Ford, who obviously is playing Thunderbolt Ross in Captain America: Brave New World. And that's a big get.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, oh, great, another celebrity interview.
Yeah.
No, D23 just infuriates me. And again, I only keep the membership because I have to go to the trade show for the job you and I do. But terrible.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about was, as far as early access to things, Disney's moved away from early access through the Magic Kingdom Club, and like other luxury brands, right? Like Ferrari and Hermes, they already have a system in place that rewards long-term customers who spend a lot of money. So like DVC owners get access to some things that others don't. Repeat Disney Cruise Line guests who reach Pearl status, that's 25 or more sailings, get first dibs on new itineraries days before Platinum, 15, or Gold, 5, and, way before the general public. So They've already got that in place. So they've gone really to rewarding guests who spend a lot of money in one area with things there. But it's not really under one umbrella, is it?
No, it is not. And the other thing, I mean, don't get me wrong, if you live in California, you live in Florida, and to a lesser extent, if you live around New York City, D23 will occasionally stage events that are cool that you can get to.
Yeah.
But if you live in the other 47, you don't honestly get to take part in these things. And so, bigger discounts for things that people might actually use would be great.
Yeah, I think it's just a very big company, and it would be hard to bring it all under one organization because the individual branches of the company would have to give up control, and no one's going to do that. But I mean, it's a good idea, but yeah. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim continues the history of Reflections, a Disney Lakeside Lodge. We'll be right back.
This is an ad from BetterHelp Online Therapy. We always hear about the red flags to avoid in relationships, but it's just as important to focus on the green flags. If you're not quite sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify those qualities so you can embody the green flag energy and find it in others. BetterHelp offers therapy 100% online, and sign-up only takes a few minutes. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
And we're back. All right, Jim, we left off last week with Disney trying to convince companies to help sponsor Epcot and the resulting cash crunch there, throwing a lot of projects into disarray.
Yeah, well, again, what Disney found, and again, this is the mid to late 70s when they're approaching countries and corporations to come on board with Epcot. And the original, as we mentioned on last week's show, original business formula was that Disney would cover a third of the cost of development and construction, and the countries and the corporations would pick up the other third. But there was so much sales resistance that Disney very quietly flipped the formula and just sort of agreed, okay, we'll pick up 2/3 if you put up the third. And as you noted on last week's show, you do something like that comes at a cost. That Epcot, which was originally supposed to cost Disney $400 million, now is looking like it's going to cost $800 million. And as we were just mentioning in the earlier part of the show, this comes at a time when, to be frank, the studio is just not pulling its weight, so to speak. They are not producing movies that connect with modern audiences. And it's worth noting here, Len, summer of 77 is when the very first Star Wars movie came out, A New Hope. And that made buckets of money. And again, this is a Disney. Well, how do we fight that? It's a North Avenue of regulars. That'll get the kids in seats. It's like, oh, God.
But it wasn't just 77, right? Because you think about the mid-70s, you had like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Jaws, Grease, Saturday Night Fever, Star Wars. None of those are Disney films.
None. Absolutely none.
At the time.
And Disney is just, out of the 8 studios, major studios that are out in Hollywood at the time, Disney is 8th at the box office. It's also worth noting that during this same time period, the ratings for Disney's Sunday night television show, which has been on since the 60s, are tanking. So this is what's going on. And so in order to get Epcot built, other projects at Walt Disney World are being tabled. And we talked at length on last week's show about the Roost, the Fort Wilderness Adventure House that Mark Davis was designing. There was supposed to be a follow-up for River Country. And everyone agrees, wow, this would do really well. But it still gets its plug pulled in late 77, early 78. And as a result, Mark Davis leaves the company. And the folks at Fort Wilderness are like, hey, and Disney World Management is look, pal, we just built River Country, all right? And not only that, 8 months after it opened, we expanded it. We have spent money on you. There are other, be happy with what you got, because, and more to the point, Fort Wilderness, the campground, is working. I mean, it's incredibly popular with guests. Yes, as the late 70s arrived, the company starts to slow its continuing expansion of Fort Wilderness, taps the brakes on what it's willing to invest in that part of the property. But again, what the company built for the campground had worked. Now, which is not the case over at the Lake Buena Vista Shopping Village. That opens.
Oh, really?
Yeah. March of 75, Len, struggles to attract visitors right from the get-go. In fact, it's doing so poorly that by 77, Disney is forced to rebrand. They step away from the Lake Buena Vista Shopping Village name, and they now just call it the Walt Disney World Village. Notice the lack of word of shopping.
Oh, interesting.
And then with the hope that, okay, let's give them something big, bright, and shiny to compel people to come over and check out the now newly renamed Walt Disney World Village. And this is where we get the Empress Lily. Now, did you ever get to visit the Empress Lily back in the day?
Not when it was, no. I really didn't start going to that area of property until like the early mid-90s.
Okay, so by then, I want to say in 95, when it got rebranded as Fulton's Crab House, but...
Right, that's what I know it as first, yeah.
Okay, so... now, mind you, the structure still exists. It's now known as Paddlefish. 220 feet long, 62 feet wide. By the way, that's twice the length of the Liberty Bell, the steamboat that's still operating over in the Magic Kingdom and the Rivers of America for a while. But by the way, Len, in researching this topic for today's show, I dropped by the Touring Plans website, and boy, you guys are not fans of paddlefish.
Technically, it's our readers. It's our reader ratings. This comes from people who've eaten there. Go ahead.
Okay, but out of the 95 table service options that you guys list for Walt Disney World, 93? Really?
93rd out of 95. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it did beat the Okeechobee prison system cafeteria.
But here's actually what it says in the at a glance there on the Touring Plans webpage. And the Boathouse, around the corner, has better food and better service. Readers apparently don't think it's worth it, and we agree. So
I actually wrote that.
There we go. I mean, what's fascinating to me is I spend a lot of time on the Touring Plans website. I have never seen the do not visit guest rating before.
It's true. So we actually do have a rating system that includes the words "do not visit." Let me provide some context around that.
Okay.
We have more than 1 million restaurant ratings, and we get hundreds of thousands a year.
Okay.
It's enough to make really fine statistical distinctions, not only between restaurants, but to come up with a rating system that is able to separate out the average, the above average, the very much above average, and then the exceptional, right? And then obviously on the other end. And like most Disney restaurants are solid B+ grades. Like the average satisfaction rating with the typical sit-down restaurant is like 89 people out of 100, right? That's solid B+ any way you look at it. Most restaurants are at least good value, if not better, right? Okay. But again, we get so many surveys that like if average is 89 and you're at 83, that is so far, there's so many standard deviations from average that we can say, look, there are better options available, right? But then for something like paddlefish, it's probably in the low 70s, which means it's like 17 standard deviations away from from average. It is so unlikely that overall rating is due to random chance, right? That it's impossible, right? That's their rating, and it's that bad. The interesting thing is this, though. There are only a couple of restaurants that have ever come back from do not visit. And I'll get you the list for next week, but it's happened. It just takes years and concerted effort. Yeah.
And it's one of these things where it's like, there are so many things wrong about paddlefish. I mean, for example, do you know what color this thing is painted on the outside? It's like the most unappetizing color of gray.
Yeah, it's like they mixed like the color champagne with the color gray and ended up with like it's hard. It's like a pewter.
Yeah,
I guess is what they were going for.
And it's like, I'd like some fresh seafood. I don't know if I'm going to get it out of a gray building. But here's the thing. This was not the case when the Empress Lily opened in May of 1977. I mean, Walt's widow, Lillian Disney. Now, at this point, Lillian Disney Truans. She had remarried in the decade since we'd lost Walt. She's there for the formal dedication. On opening day, the Empress Lily features 3 of the finest restaurants on Disney property. The Fisherman's Deck, the Steerman's Quarter, and the Empress Room that until Victoria and Albert's opened with the Grand Floridian in 88 or thereabouts. I mean, that was the finest dining on property. And
wow.
And also on an earlier episode of Disney Dish, we talked at length about how character breakfasts were actually born at this restaurant back in 1978. In fact, kind of ironic that next month on March 21st, in fact, we're going to get a live action version of Snow White with Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. And it was actually that Disney princess, Len, Snow White, that got character dining started on the Empress Lily in 1978. It was breakfast with Snow White before we had breakfast with Mickey.
Oh, I didn't know that. So the first character breakfast in Walt Disney World was Snow White, not Mickey Mouse?
There we go.
That's a trivia question. Jeez.
But at the same time, I bet it was done to the cheap. So it's like, yeah, it's me and Dopey. The other one slept in. All right. Anyway, the reason that the Empress Lily began offering a character breakfast less than a year after this Outland Eatery opened, again, May of 1977, is that's the problem that this part of the resort was happening. People weren't going to the Disney World Village in the morning and then to a lesser extent in the afternoon. It was only in the evenings after the Magic Kingdom would close for the day. And remember, this is back in the day when the theme park would basically close at 7 unless it was
Oh.
the summer or holiday season or the April and February school vacations or 3-day weekends. But that's only when people would make their way over to the shopping village. But Dick Nunes, the then head of Disney's outdoor recreation division, the part of the company that held sway over the theme parks back then, he had an idea that he thought could fix this. See, the one that borrowed a page from Disneyland out in California. And when we get back from this break, I will tell you about that idea.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
And we're back.
Okay, so again, quick recap here, folks. It's the late 70s. Epcot Center's broken ground. Won't open until October of 82. And Disney World officials, in the meantime, are now dealing with the Walt Disney World Shopping Village, or excuse me, the Walt Disney World Village. Don't mention shopping. Up by Hotel Plaza, which is having trouble attracting guests in the mornings and the afternoons. But Dick Nunes, the then head of Disneyland's Outdoor Recreation Division, he has a solution. He wants to build a hotel right next to the village, specifically, Len, a themed hotel. And by the way, this was going to be a moderate. That's an important part of this project. Dick was smart enough to be paying attention to the rise of motels and hotels off property, especially those ones out on I-Drive and down along 192. And he was like, we really should be smart about this. We should have something on property that appeals to these people. And he's like, look, we literally just built a giant steamboat next to the Walt Disney World Village. And what do steamboats do when they travel downriver? They go way down yonder to New Orleans.
Oh, okay. All right.
So this is Nunes' idea. You build a moderate resort next to the Walt Disney World Village where the theming keys off of the close proximity of the Empress Lily. So you picture buildings very much like New Orleans Square at Disneyland Park out in California. So we're talking 3 to 4 stories tops, narrow, twisty streets, wrought iron balconies.
Port Orleans French Quarter is what you're saying, Jim.
Yes. Now hold that. Thought. Okay. That
it all makes sense.
Okay. But what the idea is, you put it here. Because, well, think about it. The folks get up in the morning, they're hungry for breakfast, they walk into the shopping village and they get food. There we go. And more to the point, heat of the Florida sun. You know, you had an exciting day in the park, but you want to go back to the hotel, swim in the pool, take a nap, and hey, we're back here. Let's do a little impulse buying.
Sure.
And again, just as Len inferred, this idea that, again, Dick Nunes proposes back in the late 70s is what eventually led to the Port Orleans French Quarter and Riverside, which, on the heels of the success of Caribbean Beach Resort, which opened in fall of 88, that moderate then gets built east of Epcot Center and opens its doors in May of 91. Now, why wasn't this New Orleans-themed hotel built when Dick Nunes initially suggested next to the Empress Lily? Okay, so Michael Eisner comes through the door in September of 84. And Michael's top priorities at that time were a little different than Dick's. For example, he's concerned about Church Street Station, which is that nightclub complex in downtown Orlando. Literally people who would be vacationing at Walt Disney would climb in their rental cars and drive downtown to go explore this nightclub complex. So this is why Pleasure Island, rather than that New Orleans themed hotel complex, is built next to the Walt Disney World Village.
Okay. So that makes sense, because like if they could have done Port Orleans French Quarter literally where Saratoga Springs is now, and that's the idea, right? That would have made sense.
Okay, that's ingenious. They should have done that. But yeah.
But Michael Eisner didn't want to stick with New Orleans. He wanted to switch to something else, apparently.
Well, what was interesting is that when they were pitching themes for the moderate, Michael was like, Florida, it's next to the Caribbean and Caribbean Beach Resort.
Yeah.
And so that's what we end up is Disney's way to combat the hotels and motels on iDrive and 192. And then, again, Pleasure Island is Church Street Station. So, again, same piece of real estate, just a different vision as to how to use it, at least back in the late to mid 1980s. So, all right, back to the late 70s. Dick Nunis is looking at his crystal ball, and what he sees is, okay, a year or two down the line, we have a Disney World with 2 theme parks, which means twice as many visitors every day, and those people are going to need places to stay. So we have this New Orleans-themed hotel he's proposing to build next to the Empress Lily, but that's only part of what Dick wants to do. He figures, okay, when Epcot opens, that potentially is going to be a game changer for the shopping village as well. I want to build an extension of the monorail, a 2.4 mile route that will take people straight down to, well, not only to the shopping village and this brand new hotel I want to build, but I want to make the station. Well, here, this tells you a lot about Dick Nunis, the man, Len. He wanted to build it where Once Upon a Toy is located.
Really?
Well, with the idea that people who were staying out on Hotel Plaza, on those hotels, they could walk up the street and get on the monorail and then go over to Epcot. And from Epcot, if they wanted to continue on to the Magic Kingdom, they could take the connector that would then get them over to the ticket and transportation system. But the idea is it's kind of borrowing a page from what Walt did in the early 60s when he first took the monorail system that just went around the park and extended it out to the Disneyland Hotel. Which, of course, made booking a hotel room at the Disneyland Hotel so much more desirable.
Right, yeah.
And this is the thing. Nunis was like, the people who built down on Hotel Plaza, they took a chance on us back in 71 when nobody knew if this thing was going to work. So let's repay them for their...
Dick, you rube, you.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the Disneyland monorail was considered at the time its own attraction.
It was.
The Skyliner is considered its own attraction. The monorail in the Magic Kingdom is considered its own attraction. It all makes sense.
It does. But again, but placing the station there, so it's not just convenient. You know, it gets you to the shopping village, but more to the point, it can easily service the folks staying on Hotel Plaza.
And this is why the next phase of the Skyliner is going to go to Disney Springs, right? That's the rumor, right? So,
well, again, let's hope that actually does happen. Okay,
yeah,
now, again, we've talked about the New Orleans themed hotel. We've talked about the extension of the monorail. This isn't the only thing that Nunis is looking at for this post-Epcot opening phase of the Disney World Resort. He knows that people... They're going to want to revisit the Magic Kingdom, and if we look at hotels up by that part of the resort, they will be popular. So it's now time to dust off some of those expansion pads around Seven Seas Lagoon and Bay Lake. Now, longtime Disney Dish listeners will recall that in the early 70s, the resort came within inches of building the Asia Resort, of the Thai-themed hotel. That's what it's called in some of the literature. They prepped a plan for, well, some versions of the plan, 500-room hotel, some versions 600-room hotel. And construction was supposed to begin in 73, but we just talked about on recent shows about the Arab oil embargo and how the company tapped the brakes on basically everything that wasn't already under control. So this piece of beachfront property had been standing vacant for 15 years, Len.
Wow.
And Nunis felt it was time to build some sort of hotel there. But now, again, Disney World has been open 15, closer to 20 years at this point, and they have research in hand that suggests that, well, okay, people come here to Disney World, but then they feel like, well, I'm in Florida. I got to see more of Florida. So they get in the car and they drive down to Cypress Gardens, or they get in the car and they continue on to Cape Canaveral, or they go to Cocoa Beach. They want to see more of Florida when they're in Florida.
Palm Beach, Miami, the big hotels, the nightlife.
There we go. Okay. All right. Well, now...
Oh, we can do all that here.
And that's the thing. Dick is like, well, could we delay guest departure from property if we put some stuff that's reminiscent of classic Florida, like, for example, those huge seaside hotels that Henry Flagler built in Florida in the 1880s. And that's, I see, that's the thing. Michael Eisner always gets credit for the Grand Floridian, and he didn't come up with the idea. It was Dick Nunes. Dick Nunes was the guy who had the research in hand about this Florida stuff, and it's just sort of like, oh. And you actually, what's interesting is if you get copies of the Eyes and Ears, the Disney cast member news paper, or Imaginews, the Imagineer newsletter, you will see, starting in 1980, more than 2 years from Eisner coming through the door, you will see mentions of the Grand Floridian Beach Resort. But you'll also see, Len, a hotel that's supposed to address folks who want a more rustic Florida experience. So the folks who were, well, can we get down and look at the Everglades? Can we see an alligator?
Is this where Disney's Never Built Swamp Boat Inn comes into play?
Actually, it's called the Cypress Point Lodge.
Tomato. Go ahead.
There we go. Okay. And again, interesting part of this, it apes the New Orleans themed hotel business model. It's supposed to be a moderate.
Oh, really?
Okay. And it's again aimed at those folks who are staying out on I Drive or 192. And the idea, Len, it's only 3 and 4 stories tall. It's modeled to look like a remote hunting lodge. And in fact, it deliberately faces out onto Bay Lake rather than Seven Seas Lagoon, because again, that view backs up the story they're looking to tell here.
So do airboats take you to and from the Magic Kingdom? Because that would be
so cool, but hold that thought. We're going to get there in a second.
All right. Okay.
All right. Okay. So now, mind you, construction of all 3 of these proposed Walt Disney World hotels, and again, the extension of the monorail, all hinge on the success of Epcot. And as the listeners to the show know, opens in 82, struggles to meet its attendance and per capita spending projections. And what's interesting is we do get eventually the Grand Floridian, and we do get the New Orleans hotel, but in a different location.
We also get the Western Hotel, but in a different location.
Well, this is also true, but again, because of the issues with Epcot, that sets off a period of turmoil at Disney, which eventually ends up with Eisner coming through the door, and Michael. Right. Well, he liked a lot. When he came through the door, he went to Imagineering, and they showed him everything. And for example, you were just talking about the Frontier Town Hotel that was originally supposed to be built next to Fort Wilderness. And Michael takes a look at this thing where you can stay above the saloon or the blacksmith shop. And Michael Eisner, being Michael Eisner, is like, wow, that looks like a great idea. Let's build that in France. And it's like, what? What? And on next week's show, when Jim Schul is finally here, he's going to tell us how a lot of these ideas, which were really proposed for Florida, first had to go to France as part of the Euro Disneyland project before the Imagineers were then allowed to start developing them for stateside. And this, by the way, would have included Buffalo Junction. That was the name of the frontier town that was supposed to be built between Wilderness Lodge and the Fort Wilderness Campground. And by the way, Len, this was also supposed to have included a stateside version of the Buffalo Bill Wild West show, which was a beloved part of Disneyland Paris's offering. Sadly, shut down due to the pandemic and has never come back.
I heard that was actually one of the best things in the entire resort.
Yeah, I'd heard the same thing. Okay, and one final note before we go here, and it's why you really want to come back and hear next week's show, folks. Some of that, we were just talking about that. Let's build some of the most famous aspects of Florida right here at Walt Disney World. You know, Len, that idea has got to sound familiar to you, especially if you went and saw California Adventure 1.0 back in 2001.
2001. Yeah, let's build the best parts of California in California.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but here's the thing. What's not generally known is Disney Corporate was so convinced back in 2001 that DCA 1.0 was going to be this smash hit that they actually began dummying out a similar park for Walt Disney World. So you were just asking about airboat rides. That was actually going to be one of the attractions of the park. You were going to get to take an airboat.
I was just kidding. Is that really true?
That is really true.
Oh my God.
And that every night as the sun went down, you could go to the park's teeny tiny version of Key West and get drunk off your ass.
Oh, like their own little version of Sloppy Joe's and...
There we go.
Wait, is there a Jacksonville section of the park where someone's running around going, Bortles?
I don't know what to tell you, but again, Mr. Schul, who will be on the show next week, we have to ask him about this because...
Listeners, send in your questions.
There we go. But this was a real thing, folks.
I did not know. I didn't know. I've never heard about this project. This is amazing.
Again, I've only just learned it myself, and Mr. Schul can shine a spotlight on this.
Oh, my God. That's got to be amazing. Oh, the jokes are just going to write themselves. My God.
No.
Okay. I cannot wait for next week's show. That's fantastic. All right, nice job, Jim. All right, folks, you can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our next video is with Imagineer Jim Schul on the history of Tom Sawyer Island and the rivers of America, with cave exploration video from Disney Dish spelunker Christina Harrison. Okay. You can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len, at TouringPlans.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who will be serving up mugs of dark chocolate espresso this coming Saturday at the Coffee and Cocoa Crawl. Jim, I do this every morning. It's called Waking Up. Starting at 10 a.m. on Main Street South in beautiful downtown Minot, North Dakota. While Eric and David are doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.